Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria Q. Kane.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. This week, we're switching things up a little bit. So normally, we're going to continue to keep it this way. Normally, when we do the story of the week, it's what is in the news the biggest during the week. And of course, obviously, it would be the shipping container cargo ship that hit the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. And we will get into that later. But we decided we're going to put what we think is the craziest story of the week. So this week, Maria will go on to tell you how crazy this story is. And it was hard because there's lots of crazy stories this week, but this one I think takes the cake.
This story was submitted by a listener, which I'm so thankful. I was checking the messages of the Mother Knows Death Instagram the other day, and someone sent this in, and I was like, what? Because I didn't see this reported anywhere doing my research. But last Friday, a person was hit by a train in California, and after the incident, the victim was confirmed dead, but the leg wasn't there. So construction workers outside of the train station were just, working, minding their own business when they see this guy waving a human leg around in the air before he starts eating it.
Yes. He was... So apparently this guy was homeless. He was a known homeless guy. Clearly he's having some kind of mental health issues that he was eating a human leg. Also, he probably, there's a thing called necrocannibalism, right? It's not always done. I think cannibalism, especially in America, is most commonly done in homicide cases. We wrote, I think it was this Thanksgiving or last Thanksgiving, we did a whole entire high-profile death dissection on cannibalism.
Yeah, it was our external exam the week of Thanksgiving, too.
Yeah, so check that out if you guys want to read about all the different kinds of cannibalism. But the most common reason in America, at least, is when people do it as part of a homicide. But there are cases reported of necrocannibalism, which is when people eat people who are dead in order to survive. And the biggest case of that we presented in that high-profile death dissection that we wrote was the Uruguayan Flight 571, where in 1972, the Uruguayan rugby team was on an airplane and it crashed, and there were survivors of the crash, and they gave up looking for them because they thought there was no way that people survived it. And these people ended up living for 2 months. They ate all of the food on the plane. They said there was candy and wine, so they lived off that for a while, and then they started eating the cotton in the chairs of the plane. And finally, they resorted to the worst, which was eating some of their team members as well as the pilot in order to survive. And they were found finally.
Well, they were already deceased, too. They weren't killing each other to eat.
No, because the flight crashed and several of them died, so they ate. And they said when they were interviewing one of the team members later on after he was rescued and everything, they said that they decided to eat the pilot and co-pilot first because they didn't know them.
It's an absolutely horrible decision to make. In this case, we don't really know exactly why he was eating this guy's leg. The construction workers were quoted as saying, quote, "He was biting it and he was hitting it against the wall and everything. On the leg, the skin was hanging. You could see the bone."
Oh, so
I
nasty.
can't even imagine how traumatizing this was for the construction workers to see this, police that had to respond to this case. He was arrested, and, cannibalism isn't technically illegal in any state except for Idaho, which we covered that a couple weeks ago when we talked about that law they were trying to pass. But, I don't think he's going. I'm curious how they're going to get him in trouble for the cannibalism, or if it's just going to be contributed in the other charges he's facing, which was, taking evidence from a scene.
Give the guy a break. Like, think about this. You're whatever's wrong with you, either mentally or you're starving, that you're going to do this. Like, he clearly has some mental health issues. Just give the dude a break. Like, he really. Aside from grossing out everyone around him, he was only hurting himself, not anybody else. It's just, who would do that if they were in the right state of mind, honestly?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like he's facing a misdemeanor right now, so I'm curious if they're going to try to use him eating the leg.
I think we have a lot bigger problems in this country than worrying about some homeless guy that's eating deceased people's legs.
Yeah, I didn't know if they confirmed he was homeless or not, or just a mentally ill person that happened to be walking around the scene. I think regardless, they, instead of maybe trying to put all their efforts into charging him and prosecuting him, maybe getting him in the correct facility he needs to be in, because clearly something ain't right.
Okay, celebrity news.
Okay, conjoined twins Abby Hansel is married. So news came out this week that the conjoined twin, I don't know, do you remember the show Abby and Brittany that was on TLC before?
Yeah, of course. I've been following them their whole life since they premiered on TV.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, in the late 90s, these conjoined twins, Abby and Brittany, were first introduced to the world on Oprah. They eventually got their own show, which we were just talking about on TLC, called Abby and Brittany, and it followed their life as conjoined twins because everybody was really interested in their dynamic. So first, can you explain how they're conjoined and what makes their case so unique?
So first, let's start off. We also have done multiple posts in the gross room about conjoined twins. If you just search that in the search bar, and I think I don't remember why we got started on writing a couple high profile cases on what were called circus freaks and what people were attracted to back in the day. So we wrote about all the different conditions that could be found, and one of the original ones that we talked about was Chang and Eng, which are this famous conjoined brothers that were back in the 1800s, and by today's standards they would actually be able to be separated because they were only conjoined at the chest and the rib bones, but they had this small piece of fibrous soft tissue connecting their liver, and a lot of doctors that have examined the case say that they think that they easily could have been separated by today's standards. Now, Brittany and Abby, their story is a little bit different because they are called dicephalic parapagous twins. So they have two separate heads and they have separate organs in their chest cavity, but then really below their belly button, they share a lot of organs. So I think the parents said that there was a point that they said that they possibly could be separated, but they couldn't. They would say that one of them would have to die basically because they need to live off of each other, and the parents didn't want to do that. So their case is a little bit different because with Chang and Eng, it was almost two bodies that were completely separate that were just attached a little bit. And what's interesting about their case, though, is that they went on to marry sisters and they had 21 children between them. So, of course, when you're talking about a marriage to a conjoined twin, everybody's got a million questions about that, right?
Yeah, so why this is news today. So it seems like they got married in 2021, and the paperwork saying that Abby and her boyfriend at the time had then been married. But I'm assuming that their marriage is as one unit, right? Because you have to factor in the way they're conjoined and having sex. So that's a huge thing. Are both of them feeling it? Are both of them in this committed relationship? I think paperwork-wise, it's going to look like this guy is only married to one of the twins, but really he's probably married to both of them. Wouldn't you assume?
Well, listen, this is like a super fascinating topic to me, and I understand that they are very much know that they're of interest and they want to be left alone, which I understand that they don't want to be poked and prodded and studied, and it's almost kind of like an empowering thing that you have this thing that everybody wants and you're just not going to give it to them, right? So I kind of respect that from that regard. It's funny you were just talking about sex because there was this article written that said, they got married and we're going to answer the question that everyone's dying to know, which what's your dying to know question about this?
I mean, my questions are how, let's say only one of the twins is in the relationship and not the other. How does sex then work? Like, do they both feel it? Or that's why I'm assuming they're in kind of a
So that's what
dynamic.
I want to know about. I want to know about sex the most, obviously. But there was the mom had said years ago that there was a possibility that they could be moms one day because apparently they have one uterus, one set of ovaries, and one vagina that all works. It seems that it works. So this is what brings up the interesting theory. I came across this paper from Oxford about the ethics of conjoined twins, and it's really interesting. So with Chang and Eng, for instance, they both have their own, obviously they have their own bodies, their own brains, and they also have their own genitals. So that would be that they could each consent to having sex, along with many other things that you need to consent for. But in the case of Abby and Brittany, it's not the same because they only have one reproductive tract. Therefore, it has to be consensual between both people, which comes into what happens when you get married, right? You're assuming financial responsibility with the person, sexual activity with the person, all of these things. So I would think, yes, you're right that there has to be some kind of way that they both agree to this, but they're both treated as individual people, which they should be because they both have brains that work fine and they're able to make decisions and everything like that. They have a driver's license, and I believe they each have a driver's license, which is interesting, right? But they're a teacher, a 5th grade teachers, right?
Yeah.
Does that school pay them 2 separate salaries to teach 5th grade? There's all these there's millions of questions that could be taken into consideration. And this ethics paper was bringing up really interesting things because they were saying like they share a circulatory system. So if one of them has a headache and wants to take some hardcore drug and the other one doesn't want to feel drowsy and stuff, I mean, technically, like that person can't take that medication without the consent of the other person. I'm sure this happens back and forth all the time. I just can't even, I think that's why there's so much interest in it because people just can't even imagine what that kind of life must be like. But they were going on to talk about masturbation, blood donation, all of these different things that you don't think about. And then that got me thinking about how marriage is a legal contract. And what about life insurance? Can you take out life insurance on both of them because they're going to both die at the same time? If he's married to the one twin and she gets pregnant, is it not whose baby is it?
Well,
there's just so many questions.
You have to take into consideration everything you're saying about how they're conjoined. Like the twins you talked about, or the conjoined twins you talked about in the circus post, like you said, had essentially their own bodies each, but were attached in some way. They have one body and 2 heads, essentially. So I would think that you would have to list both of them as the mother, because technically they are, because it's coming from organs shared by 2 people.
But like the way the world is set up, you can't put 2 moms on the birth certificate like that.
Well, this is what I'm saying about the marriage certificate too. Like in my mind, obviously they wanted to be a little private about this because this happened 3 years ago, the marriage, and we're just finding out about it now. But in my mind, paperwork-wise, only one of them could go on the marriage license, but I would have to assume as a unit, and because of how close you have to be and make decisions together, because everything you do affects the other person, that their marriage is, like, they're both married to that guy. Not one of them's just married to that guy.
But then what if the other one wants to get married?
I don't know.
You can't be married to 2 people.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's a decision honestly, you have to make together. Like, this is our husband.
But I think that's more of a moral decision because, like I said, they have 2 driver's licenses. Why would you need 2 if there's going to be one body driving the car? Like, if they get pulled over, what are you going to give the ticket to one and not the other? Like, really, they're one entity.
Maybe just because...
Do you understand? What's she going to be like? No, I turned with my right arm. It was her fault. Like,
well,
it just...
I think that they each had their own driver's license because I'm assuming they each have their own social security number, and for ID purposes, I understand that they have one body, but they still have to be identified separately as far as life.
There's just so many questions. So then they both have their own social security number. So then when it's time for them to get social security, disability insurance or whatever, when they get older or when they retire, then they'll get double for one.
They should. They're
kind of.
They're technically two people. They're two brains.
I know. It's just it's a lot for me to wrap my brain around.
I think they have such a unique case that the rules kind of have to be adjusted accordingly for them specifically. You can't make a blanket law about this because they're such a unique case. And I'm wondering too if they did get pregnant, are their children likely to be conjoined twins or twins as well?
I think it's like a rare freak thing. I don't think that there's been any evidence there might be. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. But I mean the thing is with conjoined twins is they're identical twins that when the mom got pregnant with one egg and one sperm, and then when the egg split in two, right?
Yeah.
During fertilization. And that happens all the time with identical twins, but in this case, it just didn't split in two. It kind of split in 1.5, like it didn't completely split into two separate things. So they just grew together. And really, that's what determines how congenital or conjoined twins are joined, because of where they split, where the egg split and didn't split all the way. So sometimes you have cases like Chang and Eng where they just go in and they could just cut them, do a minor surgery and cut them in half. Or other times it's like it's not happening. They're almost 1.5 people.
Yeah. All right. Well, on to the next one. Halle Berry was having sex with her boyfriend when she started feeling a razor blade-like pain in her vagina. So she immediately goes to the OBGYN and they mistook her symptoms, saying it was the, quote, worst case of herpes that doctor had ever seen. But it turns out she didn't actually have herpes because her and her boyfriend were both tested and they were negative, and it turned out to be perimenopause. So explain how that works.
This shit pisses me off so bad, and I love that Halle Berry is talking about this. She's 54 years old. Now you're an OBGYN as a profession, and you have a 54-year-old woman that comes in and said she had painful sex that felt like razor blades, and the first thing you thought to tell her was that she had the worst case of herpes that you've ever seen. What that person shouldn't even be in that field of medicine, but you hear shit like this all the time. When you're in perimenopause, because estrogen makes your vagina like all plump and juicy, and when you start losing it, it becomes dry. And if you have sex sometimes and it's dry, it's raw and it hurts. That's what happened. And I don't even think you have to be a really good gynecologist. I think any person in the world knows that that's what happens. So I just really am mind blown by this, that she got blown off. And think about how shitty it feels for someone to tell you you have an STD, because if you're in a committed relationship, right, and your doctor that you trust tells you have herpes, what are you going to do? You're going to go home and start yelling at your boyfriend or your husband because you know that you didn't get it, right?
Yeah.
That could cause huge problems.
That's the first thing I was thinking, was being told you have an STD when you've been with somebody for a couple of years and you got tested and you know you don't, and then all of a sudden you do. Like, well, where else did it come from?
Yeah, and regardless if they got tested and found out the real reason, you're always going to be like, dude, you actually thought that I cheated on you and you were screaming at me, and it's just really, it's mind blowing. I thought maybe when I first read this, like, oh, maybe she called her family doctor, and the family doctor, which I think every single doctor should know this. This is like 101 shit. But I'm trying to give somebody the benefit of the doubt here. She called her family doctor and said, hey, I've been having sex and it feels like razor blades and this and that. And he maybe diagnosed her over the phone. That would be a little bit more acceptable, but no.
Would like to know how it was the, quote, worst case of herpes they ever saw, if she really was, like, she didn't have the physical bumps. So how was it the worst case of herpes they ever saw from the description of pain?
I mean, listen, I think that on vaginal exam, especially because the lining or the mucosa of the vagina is it's bumpy, kind of. When you take out a vagina, like I have many times, it's not smooth. It's bumpy, right? And if you have trauma to the vagina, then it could cause a lot of swelling and tears, and maybe that bumpy lining could have gotten really swollen and gave an appearance of something. Although herpes has a very specific appearance. I don't know, but she had an examination by an OBGYN. She should actually say his name so no one ever goes to him again because he clearly sucks.
Yeah. Okay, former Kansas City Chiefs cheerleader Crystal Anderson found out at 21 weeks pregnant that the doctors couldn't detect her baby's heartbeat anymore, and they unfortunately had to deliver the baby. So that same day, she got a fever and became septic before eventually going into organ failure. She was put on life support, underwent a couple surgeries, and then ultimately died from complications. This is a really sad story. I was also reading later in that article that her and her husband had another pregnancy that resulted in a stillbirth before this one. I can't imagine what her family's going through, knowing that, they lost 2 babies this way and then eventually her as well.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say they didn't really give many details as to what happened, but I'm pretty sure I could figure out what happened. I think that sometimes you can get bacteria that travels up inside your vagina. There's bacteria all over your vulva and everything, and in some cases it could travel up your vagina and it could infect the fetus that you're pregnant with, and you can, if it's a really bad bacteria, it could, once it gets into the placenta, it's easy to get into the mom's bloodstream, really easy, and cause sepsis. And in fact, that's when people are having these, you would call it a spontaneous abortion. That's what they're called, or any abortions in general. Spontaneous meaning like a natural one you would consider to be like a miscarriage. They typically, the most common cause of death in those cases is because of sepsis, or bacteria gets in the blood and then it travels around the body and it gets into the organs and it causes multi-organ failure and death. So what I'm curious about is that the fact that she had another stillbirth, which is a late term miscarriage. 21 weeks is far for having a miscarriage, because most of them occur earlier in the first trimester. I would say that she might have had some kind of bacteria that was normally living down there that was getting up inside her and just maybe causing this to happen. There is this one that they test for, that they usually test for closer to the end of the pregnancy. And then if you're positive for that bacteria, which is like your normal flora down there, everyone doesn't have it, but some people do, they'll actually give you antibiotics when you deliver to make sure that the baby doesn't get infected with it on the way out, or it doesn't cause any problems like that. So I don't know if they're testing for that in this case. I mean, it surely doesn't matter now. It's not going to bring her back. I feel terrible for her husband. It's just one of these freak things. Another thing is sometimes if you have, this is why it's really important, if you have a miscarriage or in this case a stillbirth or further along, that you go to the hospital or to your doctor and make sure that you get an ultrasound just to check to make sure it all came out. Because there's cases, and even when you deliver a live baby, there's cases where placental tissue or maybe a fetal part could actually be still in the uterus and could cause the mom to become septic and get really sick too. That's why when we get placentas down in the lab, we get a lot of them and we examine them to see that, we call the maternal surface where it was attached to the mom. We make sure that it's intact and it doesn't look like a piece of it was ripped off, because then there's a possibility that there's a piece still left inside the mom. And the same thing could be said with miscarriages. When we get them, sometimes the fetus doesn't come out in all parts. So, I mean, it sounds really disturbing that we sit there and count body parts, but we want to make sure that we find everything, because, again, there could be a piece left in the mom and that could cause serious problems. Obviously, it could lead to death. It's just really sad.
Yeah. All right, let's get into freak accidents. So this was our original story of the week about the Baltimore bridge collapse. So at 1:30 a.m. on Tuesday in Baltimore, a cargo ship lost its power shortly before colliding with the Key Bridge in Baltimore. This video of this bridge collapse is one of the scariest things I've ever seen. The boat was only going 8 miles per hour. You see it hit the support beam under the bridge, and then within seconds, the entire bridge is in the river beneath it. So, I immediately see this video and I feel sick to my stomach, because We live right next to the Delaware River, basically, and it goes right into the city of Philadelphia, and it's a commute my husband takes every day. It's one we go over the bridge quite frequently. Anybody could be in this position. Luckily, this happened in the middle of the night, so there wasn't a lot of traffic going through there, and the vessel was able to issue a Mayday warning. You know, by the time the alarm started going off of the vessel to the time the vessel hit the bridge was only less than 5 minutes. So they were able to alert a Mayday to police and stop any more traffic from going on the bridge. But unfortunately, a couple people were on the bridge, construction workers. 2 of them have been found dead now, and 6 others are presumed dead in the water because they believe they're in cars trapped underneath the bridge wreckage in the water.
Yeah, the 2 men that they found already were inside. They were trapped inside of a red pickup truck. Just so terrible. And I've been hearing a lot on the news, all of these experts giving advice if you're ever in that situation. And the main theme I take from all of them is just if you ever are in a situation where you think that you're going to be going into the water, either put your window down right away or break it as fast as you can. Because once you're in the water underground, it's with all of the PSI from the water surrounding you, it's almost impossible to open the door and get out of the car.
I understand that, but this happened so fast. I don't even know if those people could have registered what was happening to them by the time they were submerged.
Yeah, and I understand that too, but I think that if you were in that situation, maybe I can't even imagine. It's just such a terrible situation to even think about. But another thing that kind of pertains to us talking about medical things is, I believe when I first heard the story reported that they were saying a company had said that there was no hazardous material on the ship. And then I heard, okay, there is, but none of it's been compromised. And then I heard, okay, it has been compromised and there's a sheen on top of the water, right?
Oh my God.
And the thing that makes me mad about that is because it's like typical, first responder situation. They send in these divers and all these people. I don't know what the hazardous material is. Hopefully usually it's called a hazardous material because it's hazardous to humans.
It said they had 56 containers. Think of the size of a shipping container. They had 56 containers, including corrosives, flammables, and lithium-ion batteries, which everybody that listens to this podcast knows is the devil. So this is really great that they're coming out saying there was nothing hazardous when, in fact, there was a lot of hazardous stuff on there.
Yeah, it's not just a problem to the sea life and everything else going on in there, but just I just think about the first responders that are dipping their bodies in there to look for bodies. And I know that they've been saying, okay, we've had enough searching for today, because I know that the conditions are just terrible. You don't want to risk the lives of anyone else. It's just such a crazy freak thing that happened, and again, just like new fear unlocked, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you never want to think you're crossing a bridge and the entire bridge goes down in 30 seconds. It seriously looked like a clip out of like special effects. It didn't even seem real the way it crumbled like that. And it also makes me worry about the engineering of some of our bridges. If something like that happens, the entire thing is just going to go down like that. It doesn't make me feel really great.
I don't know.
I understand if a section of it went out, but
that's going to happen, is that it's going to be like all this shit's going to come out, because either with the bridge not being completely intact, which I don't know if it's necessarily going to be much of the bridge's fault. I mean, that thing is so heavy, and just crashing into it, it just hit like a sweet spot that no one accounted for.
Yeah.
What are you going to say? You just have to wait for them to do an investigation. And I just think they built the bridge in the 70s, and they were saying it was just so many millions of dollars back then. And I'm just thinking like, well, God, how much is it going to cost now to fix that? But Gabe sent me some videos of close-up footage of it yesterday, and I'm just looking at it, so overwhelming. I'm like, how the hell do you even clean up something like that?
It's going to be years, which sucks for commuter. I mean, it sucks for many reasons, but it's going to be a serious problem for commuters because it was a main thoroughfare.
I think it's not as from what I was listening to anyway, I don't think it's as much of a problem for commuters as it is for that port.
Yeah.
Because apparently that's like where cruise ships go through, and it not that cruise ships matter really, but like anything. It's one of the biggest ports, if not the biggest in the United States. And now it can't be used. So that might see just so many more things, increase on the roads, which I felt. I mean, I don't want to say, but we drove to the Poconos the other day, and it just seemed heavy on trucks and prices going up and things like that. But I mean, more importantly, people died, and what a shitty way to die, and hear that your family member died. They were all, I think they said out of the men, like most of them just had new babies or something terrible.
Yeah, like definitely in no case is this a good situation, but all I could think, at least it wasn't, like 8 a.m. on a Tuesday and there was hundreds of cars. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that those people that sent out the Mayday like that, even the one guy who survived, he said that someone was yelling at him on the bridge to get off. That's how he survived. It was like that quick. They weren't even able to give him any kind of formal message. They were just like screaming at him, and I mean, this is the thing me and Gabe were saying too. It's like the guys, they were all sitting in their car, like having their dinner break or whatever. You're sitting there talking to your friends, bullshitting. The doors are probably closed in the car because it's cold outside.
Yeah, you don't hear what's going on.
They're eating a hoagie, and then all of a sudden, like, yeah, they're not paying it. They can't hear what's going on out there and stuff. It's just terrible.
It is. This next one is really terrible as well. An 8-year-old girl was swimming at a hotel pool and with her family around, and then suddenly she was missing. So they call the police. They're searching all over this hotel, and they cannot find this girl anywhere. They just have seriously no idea where she went. So after reviewing some security footage, they saw that she was swimming in the pool, went under the water, and never came back up. So in this hotel pool, they had a bunch of pipes that were about a foot wide in the pool, and the purpose of them was to push out water and I guess circulate it throughout. But the pipe had malfunctioned, and instead of pushing water out, it was sucking water in. So essentially, it sucked this child into the pipe so far that when they initially looked in it, they didn't see her in there. And when they sent a camera back into the pipe, that's when they saw that she had been sucked through there and had gotten stuck and drowned to death.
Oh my God.
So this story is horrible on so many levels. A child's dead. There was a malfunctioning thing. There's definitely going to be an investigation as to how that occurred. Drowning, I can't imagine. That's what I imagine is one of the worst ways to die, is drowning. Just, I can't even fathom what that was like. And it took 13 hours for them to get her body out of there, which how absolutely horrific for the family in every capacity.
Well, I know. And it's the mom apparently she rented the hotel room for the night because she wanted to take her kids in the pool. Like, how terrible is that? And so if you think about a pipe that's 12 inches in diameter, like just put your hands out the size of a ruler, it's pretty small for a kid that's the size of Lucia, right?
Yeah.
To fit into that. So what happens is she got sucked into it, and her body was almost like bent in half. Like it sucked her in through her, picture like her butt getting sucked into the pipe. So she was bent in half. I think that the autopsy actually said that she died from a combination of drowning, but she also died from mechanical asphyxiation, which means, if somebody's like sitting on your chest and you can't expand your chest and breathe properly like that, it's like that, but to the point where you can't expand your lungs and you can't breathe, which it doesn't matter if she could anyway because she was underwater, right? But it's so and I saw that the mom put forth a lawsuit for seeking over $1 million, and I just think they should get so much more. But money isn't even going to help anything at this point. But these people need to be hit so hard in the wallet to make sure something like this never happens again, because from all accounts, nobody was doing anything wrong, and this was 100% the fault of the hotel. And you know what pissed me off even more? Apparently, the mom sent this lawsuit to this local hotel. What do you know what the chain of the hotel was? Was it?
I don't have it, and I don't want.
I don't want to. I don't want to say because I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk shit on them. But the head company, it was one of the major hotel companies. The head one came out and just said, "Oh, we do feel sorry. However, we just want to note that these are independently owned, and she didn't sue the main one itself." And I'm just like, you guys are
You're like
such
shut the fuck
scumbags.
up. Like that's not the
Yeah,
issue here.
exactly. Yeah. So, we just want to say that we're in the clear. Like, fuck you, dude.
At that point, you
it's
don't
so
need
sad
to say
and
anything at all. Like, just shut up.
I just can't. I can't imagine what this mom went through because there's a time period where the kid's gone. So you're like, is she like, you know your kids. I feel like that would be with mine. Like if I couldn't find my kids right away, I would be like, something's wrong because I know that they're up my butt all the time, right?
Yeah, they don't just
And
wander around.
to not know where she even is for hours, and then to be sitting there for a solid 13 hours while they're digging her body out of the pipe and she's dead in the pipe. Like how do you even live on like that? It's and why? Because you were cutting corners, something wasn't right. How do it's funny, we just went to that horrible water park yesterday, and we were in the lazy river thing, Lucia and I, and we were saying, I was just kind of looking at how it worked because I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. You could probably put one of these in your yard or something. Like, how does this work? And I saw something like that. There was like these really big, when you're in the pool and the filters on the side like bubble on your back.
Yeah.
It was like that, but just really huge ones that were pushing the water that way. So instead of it pushing the water, it was sucking it in. And that's exactly what happened. And I think like, well, that's scary. Like that could have just happened to us. Like we were just in the lazy river, just chilling. And that's exactly what happened to this kid. It's so fucked up.
I don't know why you went to that place. I told you the second you booked it, you were going to eat it there.
It was absolutely hell.
Okay, next.
I like Gabe and I literally looked at each other and we're like, we could do anything for 2 hours. We're just going to stay here for 2 hours. I said to Gabe, you go in burning buildings. We could do this for 2 hours.
That is so ridiculous. Okay.
It was.
Next, a 68-year-old woman was eating pork rinds when something sharp hit her throat. She assumed it was a bone, but it was actually a nail. So, how horrible is that you're just trying to eat a snack and then you get hit with a nail?
Well, it's honestly though, when you're eating pork rinds, like I wouldn't assume something was a bone either. That's not what you're supposed to be getting in your bag of pork rinds.
You're certainly not, but it's more plausible that hopefully, like in your mind, you would want to think it was something from the animal itself, not, a piece of machinery that just slipped its way into the bag. And this is not uncommon. We hear stories about this all the time where parts of machines from factories fall in the bags and whatever, but it's pretty horrible. But basically, she started throwing up blood, and then the doctors discovered that the nail had pierced one of her carotid arteries, and they had to do surgery, but she's okay after all of that, so...
Yeah, you guys should look at the article because there's a photo of the imaging of the nail in her carotid artery. And of course, what happens with that is that it's in there and she's vomiting blood that's coming from her neck. And that's a serious artery to compromise because if it bleeds out, it will kill you fast. But the nail was acting kind of like a plug. So they carefully were able to take it out and repair it. And then she got to leave and it was fine. But also another nice lawsuit.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, next. A man was test driving a Harley Davidson when suddenly he lost control and then crashed into an empty storefront wall. He was not wearing a helmet at the time of the accident, and a witness said he had also seen the guy driving the wrong way down another street. So, what do you think was happening here? Do you think it's possible he was an inexperienced motorcycle driver and just wanted to take a shot and do the test drive, or was something else going on?
I don't know. I mean, I have you have to have a motorcycle license to test drive, I would assume, right? I mean, I would say because I test drove a car recently, and I think that recall that they asked me for my driver's license, which is responsible because you can't just assume that somebody knows how to drive one of your vehicles. because of from two things. Number one, from a liability perspective of like a guy driving it into a wall and dying, or just ruining your piece of machinery that you have there that you're trying to sell that's brand new and you don't want it to crash and ruin it. I'm kind of like, what the hell with the helmet situation, but I know in Pennsylvania you don't have to wear a helmet when you ride a motorcycle. So this was Florida, right? Or
I don't remember where it was.
Well, I don't know what state it was in, but I don't know if it's one of the states that you don't have to wear a helmet. So maybe when you're test driving, it's not mandatory that you wear one. This episode is brought to you by Isam Mia.
Skincare has been a topic that comes up a lot in our world. You know, there's a lot of harmful products out there, and with the kids being so young right now and being obsessed with YouTube and everything, they just hear a product's name. They don't think about it at all. The teenagers putting out these videos aren't thinking about the products, and they're putting all these products on their skin that could be really harmful. You know, I would do anything to have my beautiful 10-year-old skin again. So it's really a shame that these kids are just putting these dangerous chemicals. With Isam Mia, this isn't a problem anymore. These products are made by a mother-daughter duo, which we love over here. You know, that's our whole shtick. They are also listeners of Mother Knows Death, so that's what's going on behind the scenes. So you know they're definitely awesome products.
Yeah, they're really cool people, and their product is awesome for people like us who have lots of different allergies to things, and their products are all natural, you know, and like Maria was saying, we've been having this problem with the little ones so much recently because they want to use all of these things that they see on these YouTube short videos of all these people using the skincare stuff, which all the people that are promoting it shouldn't even be using that shit either. But they'll show me the chemicals and it's like this acid and all this stuff. And I'm just like, dude, you're not putting that shit on your face. Like, you have young baby skin, and Isam Mia sent us some products and I gave it to the kids and I was like, why don't you use this stuff? And they really like it. They like having this whole skincare routine at night. So, and they use it and they think they're cool, and it makes me feel good knowing that they're putting all natural ingredients on their face.
Yeah, I've personally been obsessed with the body butter in tangerine. It smells so good. It leaves me smelling with this like fresh baked cookie smell after. I can't explain it, but it's so nice, and my skin is always so dry, and it's been really great because when I get out of the shower every day, I put the lotion on. It really has been helping my eczema not flare up either. My husband's been using their beard oil, and he really likes it a lot. I really value his opinion on that because he's a barber, so he's really obsessed with making sure his beard is smooth. He smells really good, so I like that definitely because, you know, men can smell disgusting sometimes, so at least I know his beard's always smelling good. But I really love that the girls are into the face care kit. So they have this trial face care kit, which is mini sizes of each of the products in their face care skin line. It includes an oatmeal bar, serum, face potion, rose oil. It's in this adorable little package. You can get it for yourself as a little, you know, if you want to try out all the products first, you want to make sure you like them. And I don't see why you wouldn't because they smell incredible and they work really awesome. But you could also give it as a gift to somebody and get them hooked on the brand too. So if you head over to isammia.com and use the code TRYME on the trial face care kit, then you could get free shipping on that item. So the trial face care kit is only $30 and you could get free shipping. It's seriously such an awesome deal. So you want to head over to isammia.com and use code TRYME when you order the trial face care kit.
It would be a great Mother's Day gift. Hint, hint. All right, let's get into violent crime.
This is definitely in my category of asshole of the week. I don't know if you feel the same way, but a 22-year-old woman has been arrested after she heard her 4-year-old son shoot himself and then she went back to sleep. So this woman was saying she was in her bedroom, heard a loud bang, and then went back to sleep without, investigating what the sound was. Later woke up, called for her son, to which he didn't respond to her, and then she went in his room and he was unresponsive on the floor. So police searched the home and found a loaded .40 caliber Glock and a large bag of marijuana, a scale, small baggies, so they assumed was for distribution. And, this was all in a closet right next to this 4-year-old's bedroom, right? So she denied owning the gun at first, saying it was her boyfriend's, and She said they normally kept the gun in the bedroom closet and doesn't know how the toddler got it.
Yeah, asshole of the week for sure. Could you imagine your son accidentally shooting himself with your gun and then just having the balls to lie to police about it? Just still trying to do a selfish thing, what's best for yourself.
Furthermore, you need to live in a castle to not hear a gunshot go off in a house and not realize that's what it is. I'm sorry. Like, anybody that's heard a gunshot, it is so incredibly loud. You would have to live on the largest property ever to not hear that go off and not be like, oh my God, what was that? It's not like the sound of a shoe dropping on the floor or something. It's pretty loud. So what's going on? I'm assuming she was intoxicated of some sort and knocked out, or just clearly negligent of the child. The child's in critical condition right now. I can't believe they weren't killed immediately. It's just really disgusting.
Yeah, which is even more messed up, because if she would have called the ambulance to come right away, I mean, he was bleeding out for all that time too. Like, maybe it wouldn't have been as bad.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this person is not a responsible gun owner, because many things are in violation, and you certainly don't keep a loaded gun in a closet when you have ever, but especially if you have children in the home. So, and then there's the lying component, saying that it wasn't hers, and then there's all the drugs at the house. It's not
Drug
a good
dealing.
look. Yeah, it's not a good look.
Yeah, she sucks.
And clearly, in my mind, I'm thinking maybe she wanted it to happen that way. And then she was hoping if she waited long enough, the kid would die. But I'm like, how do you think you're getting away with this?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
All right, well, fortunately, that's the only violent crime story we have this week. But we do have a lot of medical news that's pretty interesting.
A 34-year-old man in Vietnam went to the hospital complaining of abdominal pain. And let me tell you how shocked the doctors were when they found a live eel in his abdomen that they think went up through his anus.
Yeah, so he went in with all this pain, and they did some imaging on him. They did an ultrasound and an x-ray, and they saw what appeared to be an eel inside of his bowel. And when they performed the surgery, and they took this 12-inch still alive eel out of his intestine. And they think the only way that it got there was it went up his anus, and then it went in and it ate a hole through his colon and made it perforate, which then made all of the poop inside the colon go inside the abdominal cavity. And he ended up getting something called peritonitis, which is an inflammation of the inside of the lining of the cavity due to all of the poop being there. And yeah, that's why he was having stomach pain. And there's no way that it would have went down the opposite way. So they don't say what he was doing, how it got up there, why it was there. Did he put it there himself? I don't know, but I mean, this was reported in a medical journal. This definitely happened.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty nuts. Okay.
This was right up there with the story for the story of the week.
No, it's pretty outrageous, no matter how you look at it. Because how would an eel just be going up your anus? Like, in my mind, you had to put it up there, because let's say you were swimming or something. Like, you're gonna feel it going up there, so, and you can't stop it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure he put it up there for sexual pleasure. I'm pretty sure of that.
Okay, next, Ozempic babies. So this has kind of been like the hot topic of this week too. So women on Ozempic are taking to social media to warn others that they were on birth control and Ozempic at the same time when suddenly they got pregnant. So it seems like these GLP-1 weight loss drugs apparently affect how your stomach absorbs your birth control and therefore makes it ineffective.
Yeah, so this is the thing when you're taking like a hot new drug that hasn't been on the market long enough to have adequate studies like this over time. So there's two different parts to it. They say that number one, that it's not being absorbed in the gut correctly, and therefore it's making the birth control less efficient. And then number two, there's always been some talk that once you lose weight, you then can increase your chance of fertility. Although there's been multiple studies done, one more recently that tried to disprove that that's actually a thing. I don't know. I think that a lot of times obesity could make you have irregular periods and stuff. And once you lose the weight, you could get more on a normal cycle, and that could increase your risk of getting pregnant. So I think just because 1 or 2 studies said that there's no correlation, I don't know if that's necessarily true. But they go so far on patients that take Ozempic, the doctors prescribing it go as far as to say that you should be off it for 2 full months and have it out of your system before you even attempt to get pregnant. So the reason it's a concern is because they don't know the effect on the fetus. So it's probably better just to like not get pregnant on it.
No, totally. I mean, I always remember learning when I was a teenager that antibiotics can affect your birth control, so it's always something you should ask about when you go there. I never even thought the same. I assume because this drug, I understand this drug's been in the media a lot in the last couple years, but this drug has been around for a long time, so I would think that they would have this data already.
It hasn't. I wouldn't say it's been around for a long time.
Well,
I mean,
it's been around for way longer than the last 2 years.
But people have been taking, I understand that people have been taking it for diabetes and stuff, but like so many more people are taking it now. And there are people that are just taking it for weight loss. So I think I'm sure there are studies on it, but I just think that it maybe with such a bigger population of people using it, you really don't know how it's going to work on people until you have a big set of a control group like this.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's, you were saying antibiotics, but that could be there's lots of drugs that interfere with birth control. So that's something you should always look up if you take, especially oral contraceptive pills, that you look it up to see if it interacts with any drugs that you're prescribed.
Yeah. Okay, next. This 32-year-old guy said that in 2022 he got divorced because his wife said he had a sudden behavioral change that she couldn't deal with. So some of his behavior that was categorized as bizarre and erratic included thinking he was being followed, that listening devices had been planted around him, which I want to say with the listening devices, I don't think that's all that creepy with the microphones we have in everybody's phone and computer today. But I guess I understand where she's coming from. She made him go to the ER, and they initially diagnosed him with having a psychotic break with bipolar and schizophrenia. So they get divorced, everybody in his life ends up cutting him off, and then it turns out that he has a brain tumor that is the reason for all of this change.
Yeah, and I guess that he had some kind of a Reddit thread and was asking people if he thought that he should tell his wife that he had this brain tumor because she left him, and like, yeah, duh, of course you should, right? But so he had the brain tumor was in his frontal lobe of his brain, which makes sense because it's responsible for your personality, right? So your thinkings, your emotions, your judgment, your self-control, all of these things. And he was displaying all of these signs, and they're saying that people are diagnosed with bipolar often. Well, not often, but if they have a brain tumor, they'll find out they have a brain tumor sometimes, and they're misdiagnosed with bipolar or schizoaffective disorder, which is a little bit different than schizophrenia. But he was exhibiting all these signs, and they found this tumor, and even if they remove the tumor and treat the tumor, they're going to be cutting out a section of his frontal lobe, so his personality is likely not to go back to 100% what it was when she was married to him, even if she decided to take him back. But I think he has a valid excuse for being a jerk.
I think he has a valid excuse. I mean, from the article, it seemed like he was being pretty realistic about it. Like he didn't think he necessarily deserved to get her back, but he wanted to give her closure that it wasn't like he wasn't just being an asshole for no reason or whatever. So maybe she could feel better about her choice. I don't know, because he was saying, even though I have the brain tumor, it doesn't mean my personality is magically going to go back to what it was. Like, I still have a changed personality. So I guess he's understanding that she might not want to deal with that, but at least has a valid excuse for it. So it is sad, though.
No, it is sad. And I think that you hear it's not very common to have a brain tumor and stuff, but you do hear stories of this from time to time. And I guess when he went to the hospital the first time and was acting all crazy, it's weird that they didn't work him up further, but maybe that's not a standard thing that they would do to just say like, hey, let's just check to make sure you don't have a brain tumor. That because it's rare.
Well, he had a history of mental health issues, or not himself. He had family history of mental health issues, so I think they were chalking it up to that. But I feel like it still would have been correct protocol to just, do a couple tests. Like, when you're already there, how hard is it to just run a couple tests?
Well, it's hard because a CT or MRI costs thousands of dollars, so they're not just going to do it for no reason. Like, if he wasn't displaying other symptoms of a brain tumor, like nervousness in a hand or double vision or anything like that, I think how many people a day go in there acting like that? They can't do scans on everybody. It just wouldn't make sense.
Yeah. All right, this next one is completely crazy. So, one day in 2020, this guy wakes up and realizes everybody he looks at in person, their faces look demonic. And by that, I mean their eyes are stretched back, their mouths are stretched back, they have these deep creases in their face. So he's seriously seeing everybody look like demons. But this problem is only happening in person, not if he sees a photograph of somebody or a picture of them on the computer or TV. So luckily, he knew somebody that taught visually impaired people and suggested that he had this condition that's abbreviated to PMO. You could say the full word. There's no way I'm not butchering this.
I don't know if I can say it. I'll attempt to say it. Prosopometamorphopsia.
I never would have gotten that.
Exactly. That's what we'll call it, PMO. But you have to look at the article because they show pictures of the faces what this guy sees, and it's terrifying.
It's so scary.
And he wrote, when he woke up, he put, this is a quote, he said, "My first thought was that I woke up in a demon world."
No, so what's cool about today is that he was formally diagnosed with this condition after the person he knew suggested that might be the case, but he was able to work with scientists to look at pictures of people and look at them in person and have them digitally manipulate these photos to show how he was seeing them. So it's really cool that like one part of his brain sees it normal through a photo, one sees it differently, and they were able to work together to show what the people look like. So if you go in the gross room and click on this article we have linked, you can see exactly what we're talking about. And it's just, I don't know. I'm looking at these pictures like, oh, that's scary, but I absolutely can't imagine if this was my day-to-day life, walking around every single person you interact with looking like this. I feel like you would just go crazy
also, if you
from
just,
it.
Yeah, and like if you just woke up and just started seeing that, like you would go completely nuts. So they were saying that they're not exactly sure why it happens and it's so rare, but it seems to be a problem with the way that people perceive people's faces. But of the people that they know have it, they already have done some studies to see that they've had associated other neuro conditions like migraines even, and other things like prior history of brain trauma and stuff like that. So this guy, he had only 4 months prior to this, he had carbon monoxide poisoning, and he also had a history of having brain trauma when I think it said that his trailer hit him in the head or something at the door of this trailer. So he had 2 histories of brain trauma, and it seems that there's some kind of connection there, but they're not 100% sure why.
Yeah, and they're saying there's only 100, there's fewer than 100 cases of this reported ever. So they don't know if it's more common and it's just underreported or what. If I was seeing things like this, I would assume something was horribly wrong, and I don't.
Yeah, but would you feel comfortable telling your doctor like, hey, I would be kind of scared to tell somebody that because I would think they would think I was completely nuts.
Well, yes, but also I mean, I can't imagine living like that every day is not so scary. So do you just get to a point where you're just like, I can't deal with, like, I either got to be institutionalized or I got to figure this out. Because how would you just live your life like that? Okay, next. Between 2020 and 2022, a 26-year-old woman had experienced 3 acute kidney injuries each time after receiving a hair straightening treatment. So this woman's saying that previously she had no medical history of anything going wrong. But then after going to the salon each time would experience vomiting, fever, diarrhea, back pain. So I'm kind of like, all right, if you were getting all these symptoms, including she also said she would get, burning and ulcers during the treatment, why are you going to keep getting it? And I had a Brazilian.
Because your hair looks good. Your hair looks good. That's all she cared about.
Yeah, I had the Brazilian straighten. It was called a keratin treatment when I got it done. They at the time I got it done, they were putting like formaldehyde in my hair, which gave me one of the worst migraines I've ever had in my life. So right there, it was enough for me. And my hair did really look nice and really smooth, but I don't know. I don't think it was really worth it. It took a long time to come out. I lost all volume I had in my hair. It took a really long time for my hair to go back to normal texture. I couldn't do anything with it except have it straight, like curl it, which was driving me nuts. But once I got the headache, that was enough for me because that was absolutely brutal.
Yeah, so they made this new formula with glycoxylic acid, which was supposed to be the safer alternative to the formaldehyde in this Brazilian hair straightening treatment. And she would have these symptoms all the time and go to the hospital. And when she had her blood work done, her creatinine was raised, which is a byproduct of muscle wasting in your blood. So it goes into your blood system and then you urinate it out, and it could be seen in blood tests. So when they did that, they said, okay, they're diagnosing her with acute kidney injury, which acute means it's happening right away. It's not something that's a long-standing process. And most people that get diagnosed with acute kidney injury, they can recover from it, but you don't want to keep giving yourself acute kidney injury just so you could get your hair straightened. It's really bad and it could go really bad. You don't want to mess with your kidneys like that. So, this is just a public service announcement because apparently the thing that's supposed to be safer than the formaldehyde, maybe it is technically safer because at least as of right now, it doesn't seem like a carcinogen. I love how, Maria, when you had it done, they branded it as a keratin treatment. Like, to me, it's just like, it sounds so natural. Like you're just putting keratin, the natural protein in your hair, right on your hair. And here it's like formaldehyde.
Well, this is like my fault. I don't know. I feel like I was 22 or 23 when I got this done. And I was just, I just heard, oh, my frizzy hair could be straight, and it was like sold. I didn't look into it at all. I didn't even know formaldehyde was in it until after I did it. You know what I mean? And then I felt...
Yeah, I knew right away when I smelled that shit. I was like, this smells like work.
Yeah. So, I don't know. As I'm older, I'm like, there's importance of looking into the ingredients in these products we're using. But yeah, just watch out at the hair salon. And I think it's safe to say, if you don't feel good every time you leave the hair salon, you probably shouldn't keep getting done what you're getting done.
Well, at least they were able. The good news is, because this actually has happened to several other people, right? The good news is, because most people would get this done and be like, fuck that, I'm never getting that done again. But she kept going and then was able to directly pinpoint it to that treatment, because you might go home and like you don't even think about it. You know what I mean? You go to the salon, you get this done, you don't feel well, you could have thought you had a GI bug, you go to the hospital or whatever, and they're like, I don't know what caused it. It happens sometimes, whatever. But it's good for research purposes that they were able to pinpoint it to this thing because she kept going back.
Yeah.
So
definitely. Okay, tell everybody about this pig kidney organ transplant.
Okay, so this is the first of its kind. I think on when we were doing Mother Knows Death in the Gross Room last year, we talked about a pig kidney getting transplanted into a person that was already declared brain dead, and it kind of seemed to have worked. So they did, for the first time, inside a live person that needed a kidney transplant. And one sense, you're just like, all right, I don't want to be the literal guinea pig to get this thing done. But this guy, he had already had kidney failure, and he got a kidney transplant back in 2018. And for the first 4 years he had the transplant, it was fine. And then his body started rejecting it, which commonly happens. And he was going back on dialysis again. and he's on the transplant list, right? Well, this is your chance, right? So many people die on the transplant list and never get the transplant. So your choice is either go with this experimental pig kidney or die. So, of course, you could see why he would want to try it, because I feel like I would too, right? And they did some genomic edits to this pig kidney, so they were making it to be more compatible with a human. Because when you do a transplant, like if you put anybody, even if I put your kidney inside of my body would recognize it as being foreign and it would start attacking it. So you want to make sure that you put in the most compatible thing so your body accepts it, because that's what happens. It's called kidney rejection or transplant rejection. So it's really cool. It's awesome that it worked. And the guy has been alive for several days, and they're going to report back in a year to see how he's doing with it. But this is kind of life-changing, especially if they can do it with other organs like a liver, a heart even. And of course, I knew this was going to be a thing. I just knew it as soon as I read it. Well, what about the life of the pig?
What about the life of the human?
Yeah, I think I understand that people love animals and this and that, but I'm like a hardcore scientist when it comes to the top of the food chain and all of that kind of stuff. And that's just how it is. And there's a lot of ethical things with it. People don't think that animals should be bred just for their organs. I'm not sure how it works, because if it, I don't even want to sound stupid saying this. I'm not sure how they edit the gene. I'm assuming they do it when the pig is still alive. So they would, in theory, if they took one kidney from a pig to give to a human, the pig could still live its life with the other one. But I'm really not sure of the procedure with it. But there's also all this debate because, there's some religions that don't eat pork.
Yeah.
So would they be objective to getting it? But then a lot of the religious leaders said that they don't have to adhere to the dietary restrictions if it affects human life. So let's say, for example, an Islamic person was dying and needed to eat food. They would be allowed to eat pork if their life depended on it, So I think that could fall into the same category. But it's really interesting, and I think it's great for technology, especially kidney transplants, or just like people. It's so sad to think that somebody could live easily with one and they die on the list because there's just so many people that need them.
Okay, the FDA is warning against the use of unapproved over-the-counter numbing creams. So they're saying that ingredients in some of these products, specifically lidocaine, are found in much more higher concentrations than are federally allowed. And health effects from this could include irregular heartbeat, seizures, breathing difficulties, and more. So what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's great that they put out this warning. So they've actually identified 6 different products that are sold on the internet, and the FDA has sent these people letters to be like, hey, you need to stop selling this right away and prove to us that you're not making it and selling it anymore. Because lidocaine is in the family of like cocaine. So you don't want to have too much of that in your body because it could cause a lot of the same effects. And a lot of people forget that your skin's the biggest organ in your body. So when you're putting cream like that on, it absorbs through your skin. And it could cause you to have cardiac arrhythmias. It could cause seizures, coma, and death. So you don't want to get, number one, I always thought it was kind of weird that you could even buy these high levels without getting a prescription for it. So for example, Lucia, my little one last year, had to have a biopsy on her leg. And the doctor prescribed us lidocaine cream, and we put the lidocaine cream on her leg for a couple hours and before the procedure, and we kind of wrapped her leg up in a saran wrap. So then when we got there, they opened it up and her skin was so numb. So then when he put the injection of the lidocaine in her leg, like she didn't even feel the needle going in because it numbed her so well. And a lot of people use this for microdermabrasion or laser hair removal or tattoos, cosmetic tattoos, any of that. And they have specifically identified brands not to use. And I'm sure that's the most attractive brand to people who want to use this cream because it has such a higher dosage of the lidocaine.
Yeah, I also heard this rumor. I've asked a couple of my friends at Tattoo about it, where if you use certain numbing cream, that when your tattoo healed, the lines would be all blown out because of the way it healed. But some of my friends
Yeah,
at
I've heard
Tattoo
that
say
too.
that that's just a shitty tattoo artist excuse for their work not healing right. So I am
And that
curious
could be
about it.
possible, but also just like don't be a pussy and why do you need to use cream? Like the whole point of getting a tattoo is because it hurts. Like if the whole procedure is just going to be like this cakewalk, then like you didn't really earn it. I'm like old school.
I'm
like
the
that.
biggest pussy when it comes to pain, and especially needles, and I could sit through a tattoo. So if I could do it, I feel
anybody
like
can sit through it, please.
Our last story is very interesting to me.
This is other death news, right?
Yeah, other death news. Rise of the Resistance Star Wars ride in Disneyland was closed down after somebody scattered human ashes. So, did you see the picture somebody shared of it?
Yes.
So,
it's hilarious.
If you've been on any ride at Disney, you know typically they have like ultra waxy, glossy floors on every ride, and the floor of this ride is black, and this picture somebody posted is these ashes like smeared all along them. It looks like somebody threw the ashes down and then somebody mopped on top of them, and they're just smeared along the whole area. But they had to close the ride down, which apparently is something that happens commonly there because, you know, it's like they consider it a health violation to be spreading human remains in a ride, and people are seriously disturbed by it.
And it's been commonly done on the Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean. I mean, I totally get it. I love Disney, and I don't know if I'd go that far, but there's people that are crazy Disney people. But maybe just bring like a little teaspoon of it, and that's it. You don't need to drop the whole damn person, because the problem is that you're gonna dump them on the whatever. What was this? The Guardians of the Galaxy?
No, I thought it was the Guardians of the Galaxy ride, which is our like new favorite roller coaster, but it was one of the Star Wars rides.
Yeah, so, and you think you're doing your family member a disservice, and then they come out with these big-ass vacuums with the HEPA filters on them, and it's going in the trash. So if you just did like a little teaspoon of it, nobody would even notice, and you wouldn't ruin everyone's day from shutting down a ride for a couple hours. Like, it's a win-win.
That's exactly what an employee was quoted in this article saying, like, it kind of is idiotic because we have to clean it up, so your loved one's not really resting there. They're lying in a trash can afterwards. So, and
yeah, it just doesn't make any sense.
My personal thoughts are you could do it, but, like, you're not, like, these people aren't being slick enough, right? Like, if you had a little vial, you could just, like, tip it out the side.
Exactly.
Nobody would
like
even
notice.
The
dark, like this. Like, nobody would even notice.
You can't take a whole
did you ever
Ziploc
see
bag of ashes and dump it.
Like, people are pretty big. They burn down into a nice big pile. But it's so crazy to me that Disney says that they specifically sell Disney themed urns to avoid this. And I'm like, you know, that's not the same thing, dude. Like, come on.
I don't listen. Like, I wouldn't personally be bothered by ashes being spread on a ride, right? So I was watching Real Housewives a couple weeks ago, and they were in Barcelona, and Sutton Strack was like, "Oh, I'm gonna dump my friend in the sea," right? So she takes the bag and like lifts it, and they all come out and blow in the wind in the women's faces. And I'm like, that is disgusting. I would throw up everywhere if ashes were going in my mouth. It is kind of
gross.
If somebody's just dumping it on the ground on a ride, do it. If that's really what you need to find peace for the death of your loved one, like
a teaspoon though, that's it.
Yeah, you don't need to take the whole Ziploc bag and like have this giant poof come out. Just be more slick about it. It's really not that hard. You could put it in a little container and just have your moment of peace and just be discreet.
And you could put it like all over Disney World. You could put some in a garden.
Yeah, wouldn't it be fun to sprinkle a little behind this ride, a little on this ride?
Yeah.
But like, I'm thinking if you're on It's a Small World, which is a ride that's pretty generously lit, and you see somebody dumping something in the water, you're going to be like, what's going on? So
Yeah, some powdery substance, you'd be like, yeah, what's up with
yeah,
this?
you got to be a little more slick about it. So just like read the room and figure out how you could do it, and don't dump the whole bag because that's just stupid. And then your loved one is in a trash can or in a vacuum filter when you could do so much better and dump the person in the garden.
All right, guys. So before we get started with the questions of the week, we have a couple visitors here that wanted to say hi. They're off school today because it's Good Friday. So Lil and Lou, you want to say hi?
Hi.
They're on the video sitting on my lap here, and we're all squished into this one frame. And why don't you tell everybody what we're gonna do later to get ready for Easter? What are we gonna do?
Dye Easter eggs.
We're gonna dye Easter eggs. How are you gonna do it?
I don't know. Dye.
Oh wow!
Better than last year when you guys were at my house in an emergency situation because of your floor debacle.
Oh yeah, remember Maria saying, remember last year we had to do it at her house because our floors were getting redone and we couldn't stay at our house, and the Easter Bunny had to go to Ree's house instead. Yeah. So now we could do it this week, right? We'll do it tomorrow. And we stop playing with the microphone, guys. Stop.
ASMR.
This ASMR testing
right.
driving me nuts.
I know. I seriously can't stand it. Put the microphone closer here so we could hear. All right. Okay. All right. We'll say bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Your debut was awesome. Thanks.
Okay, every Friday on the @MotherKnowsDeath Instagram, we drop a little question box so you guys can ask the question of the day. We are going to be doing a grand question episode, if that's the right way to say. A big question episode coming up in a couple weeks where we answer, spend the whole episode answering all of your questions. So some questions we don't get to in the weekly questions that we collect, I'm putting on there. So if you haven't heard your question answered so far, it might be popping up on the spring questions episode in a few weeks. So today's Friday, so make sure to head over to the @MotherKnowsDeath Instagram, head over to the story, and submit your question for next week's episode. First, do you have any advice advocating for yourself in the healthcare industry?
Yeah, as far as what, like getting more money and raises and promotions and things like that, I guess that's what you're talking
Well, that
about.
and maybe because you've talked about in the past how, you've had complications with like the way you've looked and your versus your work, right? Like the way you look with your tattoo should have nothing to do with your performance. So how did you get around that type of thing?
I mean, the thing is that you have to understand when you get hired in the healthcare industry that's one thing that I didn't realize. Like they act like the human resource department is there for you. They're there to protect you as an employee, and they're not. They're there to protect the hospital or the healthcare establishment that you're working for. So to go there and try to cry to them and complain that somebody's not treating you fairly is almost pointless. I've seen countless people, including myself, get nowhere with that. The best thing you can do is just, like everything in my life has turned out a specific way, and I fought for myself as much as I could. And then if I had to leave another job and go to another job, and it just happens sometimes, but you should always stand up for yourself, because there's been times that, for example, when we had a student that was graduating, they went up to her and offered her some astronomically low salary for her to work there, like so low, like $20,000 less than she should have been getting started at. And she was a new student and young, and she just didn't feel comfortable fighting for a higher salary because she was scared that they would say, well, never mind. And my advice to you, I say this to Maria all the time, is it won't hurt to ask. Like, the worst they could tell you is no. They're not going to say they're not going to hire you anymore because you asked for more money. But if you don't take the chance, or you don't take a chance with anything in life, you're never going to get anywhere. So you just have to, you have to understand that they're always going to try to screw you no matter what to get their way. So you have to fight back, because I look at it as like it's a negotiation. It's not like what they say is set in stone and that's it. So that's all I could say.
What's our favorite topics to talk about besides gross room related ones? I'm assuming like anything we talk about between gross room and the podcast and Instagram.
Mom.
We love making fun of Beth.
We love making fun of my mom. We talk about a lot like this. Well, we don't talk about any of the stories anymore because we want this to be authentic of how we would really talk about it. But these kind of stories are something that we would talk about commonly. So there's like a bunch of other stories that happen all week that we talk about that have nothing to do with medicine. That just, we just like talking about, did you hear this? This is happening. This is happening. I feel like we talk about like life stuff more than we're together all day, every day. So we talk about lots of stuff. Did you see this new line of clothes that came out from this designer? Do you want to go to the mall later? How are we decorating the house? What are we doing at the Phillies game? What are you wearing to CrimeCon? Like, yeah, it just, which we still haven't decided yet. But like, it's just, we just talk about like normal, I guess, mother-daughter stuff all the time. Like, it's endless. It's random and endless.
Yeah, we're really not that interesting. So we appreciate the listeners we have so far. When we're having a bad mental health day, what are some things we do to make us feel better?
I like to do art projects around the house, or I really enjoy, you're going to think that this sounds weird, but I like mowing my lawn and going outside and picking weeds and stuff. Like there's something satisfying about doing certain things around your house yourself, because then when you look at it and it looks good, you're like, oh, I did that. I didn't hire somebody to do it. I did it myself. And it's relaxing to me because I can't hear anything, and I just get to kind of go out there by myself and just be in my own head and do that, or paint or anything like that. I just like to keep myself busy. But
yeah, I've been
off of this topic.
I embroider a lot, but that's nice because sometimes I can, if I'm embroidering, I can't look at my phone at all, which is really awesome, which is why I started doing it. If I'm having a really bad day, I like to there's a coffee shop that's not close, but also not that far from my house that I really like. And if I'm having a really shitty day, sometimes I'll just want to take the drive and listen to a podcast or music and go and get a nice latte from there and like walk around some antique stores or something just to get my mind off of what's going on. Or I'll embroider, or I've been reading a lot lately. My husband got me a Kindle for my birthday, and I've set a goal for the year that I was going to read 30 books, and I just finished my 21st book already for the whole year. So I only have 9 more until I reach my yearly goal, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, I want to hit the 30 books by June, and then I want to see if I could get to 50 by the end of the year, but we'll see, because sometimes I could really, like, last week I read 4 books. This week I don't think I'll have time like that, so it just depends.
Just wait till you have kids.
I know, it's all gonna go down the toilet, but yeah, there's definitely, like, I like taking a drive. That helps me sometimes get my mind off things, and just, I always think like getting a coffee or tea or something, and just is a nice ritual I have to calm myself down. So that's all I got on that. But thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for waiting till Friday afternoon to listen to it. We're really excited because we're going to the Phillies this weekend, which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot because we're huge baseball people. So hope everybody has a good weekend and a really good Easter.